Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about how to accelerate insights and enhance efficiency with AI-generated catalog documentation. And our sponsors today are Databricks and Impetus. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from David Stoddard with TDWI, and after Dave speaks, we'll be joined by Oliver Chu with Databricks and Ravi Shankar Rao Vallabhjosala with Impetus for presentations and a fireside chat. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll receive technical assistance. And lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version, as well as a link to download the PDF of today's slide presentation. Again, today we're going to be discussing how to accelerate insights and enhance efficiency with AI-generated catalog documentation. And our first speaker is David Stoddard. He's the Senior Director of Research for Business Intelligence at TDWI. As an analyst, writer, and researcher, Dave has provided thought leadership on key topics in BI, analytics, IT, and information management for over 2 decades. Previously, he headed up his own independent firm and served as Vice President and Research Director with Ventana Research. He was also the founding Chief Editor of Intelligent Enterprise and served as Editorial Director there for 9 years. With TDWI Research, Dave focuses on providing research-based insight and best practices for organizations implementing BI, analytics, performance management, and related technologies and methods. Welcome, Dave, and with that, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. We've got a great topic, and welcome to Oliver and Ravi as well. We're going to have a good discussion. So I'm going to kick it off with just some TDWI research perspectives on our topic of accelerating insights and enhancing efficiency with AI-generated catalog documentation. So what I want to talk about is, just the big picture, the AI urgency, and we certainly are seeing it in our research, and I think we can read about it every day, hear about it every day in the media. The urgency to driving transformation in data demands. It's changing data demands very quickly, and the expectations that business users have, all types of users in organizations. So moving towards generative AI, so from AI and machine learning, and of course, it's all really made possible by advances in AI and machine learning, software engineering, able to use DevOps, data ops, ML ops, to organize how organizations pull together projects for AI and machine learning and to be able to move into generative AI. And then, of course, it depends on the scalable, high-volume data platforms and processing power that is available, particularly on cloud platforms today. So all of this is really coming together to make generative AI possible. Large and small, I will say, because they're small and, of course, private language models. We're seeing a lot of changes in that area. Of course, initially really about LLMs, large language models, looking at, often, billions of points of data, parameters, to produce and ultimately generate content. And of course, now organizations are looking at ways they can use small language models, private language models, to have a better selection of the data that the models are working with to produce results. And so we'll be talking about that a bit in our webinar. So about enhancing natural language search, querying and interaction. So all these areas that organizations have been, users have been working with for a long time, but this is really just accelerating what can be done with those tremendously. So enhancing natural language search querying capabilities, AI-generated querying, and then to bypass manual coding. So eventually to sort of get past the code and query business intelligence kind of parameter and being able to use generative AI to do much more than that. It's part of the democratization trend, the data and democratization trend. So more users seeking to apply analytics and AI insights to daily decisions. So ultimately, this is where this is headed, and I'll be talking about that a bit, the idea of augmentation, wanting a quicker path to contextual insights, situation updates so that they're looking at metrics, KPIs, notifications, be able to understand those better in context and get a deeper meaning of what decisions need to be made and what information they need to make that decision. Conversational interaction with chatbots, certainly that's probably the most the instantiation that's most popular today and is going to be moving forward and getting more intelligent as we move forward. And so we see in our research that 33% are looking at, in our research, or most current research, saying that augmenting tools with generative AI and prescriptive recommendations is a top priority in the next 12 months. All right, so let's look at a little bit of research data about what we're finding. And so this is interesting to review. I won't go through all of this, but what we're seeing here is just, we asked about AI-driven automation and augmentation priorities, how important it is to the organization to increase AI-driven automation and augmentation, which future areas of interest are important. So 38% are saying that AI-driven automation and augmentation in BI query and reporting. And so again, getting to that, the business user, what they're trying to do with it. So BI querying, reporting, dashboards, performance management is very important and a current priority. 38% saying it's important, but not their current priority. But I think that speaks to that it is a rising level of importance. And so there's some other stats on there that I think back up some other points around that. But I also want to point out that in data curation, so data, just getting the data preparation, the curation steps, trying to get the data usable, trustworthy, accurate, complete. 30% saying AI-driven automation and augmentation is very important current priority in the data ingestion, pipeline preparation, transformation kind of cycle through the data. 29% saying it's important. And then looking further down in the chart, we can see things that have to do with generative AI in particular. So generative AI and augmentation interest, 22% looking for recommendation engines and or chatbots, a very important current priority, 27% saying it's important, but not the top priority right now. But I think it's the kind of thing where we're going to see the numbers change as we move into our research later in 2024 and into 2025. I'm sure the percentage will be, of course, higher, but I think this speaks to its importance as it is. 21% generative AI capabilities for business users, very important current priority, and 18% content creation, including code, generative AI, large language models, very important current priority, 38% saying that it is important. So at this point, I'd like to ask actually our audience a question just to sort of get a level set as to where our audience is with generative AI in particular. So how prepared is your organization for generative AI? And are you developing and deploying generative AI projects now? So the first answer, A, is yes, we are developing and or deploying generative AI today. So you're really at the cutting edge and probably the most aggressive with this. So, and then second would be we are planning to use it soon and are experimenting with it now. So you have some active projects going about it. And then third, the C answer would be we are learning about it, but have not yet launched any projects with generative AI. So welcome here and hope we can inform you on some things around generative AI and some of the things that can make it successful. And then fourth answer is we are not ready and have no projects currently underway. And then finally, don't know, or NA. So I'm going to let a few more answers roll in so we can get as many as possible. And okay, so let's take a look. And so this is just a segment of our audience today, but let's take a look. Okay, so about 16% or so, just under 16% saying that they have projects going on today, 38.6% planning to use it soon or experimenting with it now. Nearly the same percentage are learning about it, but do not yet have projects. And then 9.1% not yet underway and no projects currently underway, or not ready and don't have any projects underway, and then none for don't know. Okay, so it looks like the top answers are that they're planning and learning about it. So great, thank you. So ensuring user business value from augmentation. And so some of the questions that we see need to be answered by organizations as they step into the AI augmentation and using generative AI is it effective? Is it effective in helping users make decisions, be less confused by the data? So you don't want all of the answers coming to make users even more confused, and to meet longstanding goals for data-informed decisions. So organizations have been building with business intelligence to analytics, to developing AI and machine learning, and then filtering that down to users. Is it getting to that long-term goal of making data-informed decisions, or is it distracting from it? Our answer is accurate and trustworthy. Our answer is consistent for the same or similar questions. So in other words, this is a very important question as users ask questions, maybe slightly different phrasing of the questions. are they getting consistent answers? Can the outputs be evaluated and traced back to models and data? And these are some of the things we'll be talking about in our discussion today to solve some of these questions, to come up with some answers to some of these kinds of issues that organizations are facing. And point out here that use of retrieval augmented generation, RAG, is becoming something that is definitely a rising trend, to be able to retrieve, to be able to look at specific domains, the data in specific domains, to be able to just basically be more selective about what the language models are using, whether it be large or small or private language models, to predetermine knowledge sources, to be able to have more control over that, so that you can control the output that will be received and make it more consistent. So RAG, and I'm sure there's going to be things that are coming after that, are going to be very important. Empowering humans to avoid an even wilder Wild West. So this has been an issue that organizations have faced already with self-service BI and analytics. So we don't want this to get worse, particularly with the kind of things we all know about with hallucinations, mistakes coming from the use of generative AI, irrelevant information, again, the things that are not really helping with the data-informed decisions, and then exposure and use of sensitive data, so governance issues. And then finally, the issues of availability of talent, the data that you need, the resources to drive the processing, issues around sustainability, because it's driving a lot of energy use to work with these technologies. And so those are issues that are also coming up in organizations. Okay, so let's take a look again at some research data. And here we asked, what are some of the priorities for optimizing AI and machine learning and increasing business value? And I think a lot of these points do speak to some of the common challenges that we see. So number one is 45% saying make it easier for users to discover and access all types of data. And so that's the issue, productivity issues, difficulty finding and working with consistent data to feed the models, to get to the answers that the organizations are looking at. So that's the kind of data availability issues are a concern. Making it easier for non-coders to search for, access, and prepare data, 42%. Automating discovery, actionable data insights. So these are the kind of things that generative AI and be able to automate a lot of those processes can be very helpful to a lot of users. And other challenges that we see here and also on the research shuttle show in the next slide, slow to determine the right data sets for large language models and other AI models. So this is always an issue. Do we have the right data? Is that data available consistently? What needs to be done to transform, to prepare that data? And then can we trust the results, as we saw in the last chart I had? And having the ability to look at the data, to data lineage, to understand the issues with the data. And then issues around governance. Poor governance, often the case that it's not in control of what organizations are looking at in terms of the data sources they're tapping and how users are working with the data and sharing results. So it's disorganized. There's a lot of disorganized information about the data and the AI assets. So looking at, again, it's a little bit more research here. So here we asked really just specifically about data management and governance for analytics and AI machine learning specifically. So some of the top priorities here, and they do speak to some of the data availability issues that I talked about. So reducing time and costs associated with data collection and preparation, 43%. So this is the top issue that organizations are looking at that we've researched. And increasing data availability, so 40% there for the development, training, and testing, and then making it easier for users to operationalize data pipelines. So just getting the data through the procedures of pipelines and transformation are definitely top of mind for many organizations to improve, to have more effective AI and generative AI in particular. All right, let me ask one more poll question. This is a little bit more specific about the challenges organizations are facing, so in our audience today. So which of the following is your organization's biggest priority right now for improving how you develop and deploy AI and machine learning and increasing the readiness for generative AI? So first is that issue around data exploration and availability, making it easier to locate the right data for AI projects and know about the data, so know about its accuracy and completeness. So those kinds of issues, and we did see in our research, so it wouldn't surprise me if that's at the top today. Second, or the B answer, is having better and more centralized information and documentation about data and AI assets, including, or for example, through a catalog. So we talked a lot about use of data catalogs and expansion of data catalogs to managing AI assets as well today. So is that your biggest challenge right there, is not having good and centralized information? And then third is governance. So data governance to ensure protection of sensitive data, and then AI model governance for risk assessment and to ensure responsible use. So governance issues are the main thing that's holding you back. And then fourth, improving AI accuracy and project efficiency and productivity to accelerate business value. So those are those kind of going together, accuracy, not having to kind of go back and redo projects, having a good process in place for that so that you can increase efficiency and productivity. And finally, if there's one that I don't have listed here that is your main challenge, you can use the ask a question box to supply your own answer. All right, so the answers are coming in, and all right, let's take a look. And so again, this is sort of a portion of our audience today, but so we've got 18.8% saying it's the exploration and availability issues of the data, but larger percentage are saying that having better centralized information. So we're going to be talking about that, of course, today. AI generated catalog documentation and just using catalogs effectively. So 28% there, 31.3% on governance issues. And so actually catalogs are very important for that. So we're talking about some governance issues as well. 18.8% about improving accuracy for product efficiency and productivity. And then finally, great. Okay, so we'll take a look at the answers that are supplied in the audience Q&A portion of our webinar. Okay, so to kind of moving to the conclusions of what, what I'm talking about today, catalogs. So data intelligence systems, sort of catalogs sitting right in the middle of that, but they can include a lot of other kinds of, like master data management, data lineage systems, metadata management that's inside of data platforms, all of these things coming together to increase the amount of intelligence you have about the data, to help users find trusted data assets, to uncover data relationships that they may not have seen, to learn more about the data quality and the lineage. So these are the contributions that data catalogs are really providing. And so we can see in our research that actually catalogs for single data platform and application tend to be the most common. 37% have those now, 37% planning to have one. 30% have a catalog for a single data department, or a single department or a project team. So again, this is fairly common. 27% have an enterprise data catalog. And a lot of organizations, that is the goal, to try to get to that. Catalogs, of course, for platforms or for departments are very valuable, but they do kind of build in the issue of trying to coordinate all the catalogs and having, coordinated and centralized information. And so we see 51% planning to get to an enterprise catalog to help us solve that problem. Critical to data governance to be able to spot sensitive data, to know where sensitive data, to be able to manage it, manage its use and sharing. And then organizations typically and traditionally have had challenges with manual documentation and maintenance of data catalogs. And so things we'll be addressing in our webinar today. So to conclude, some of the key points about trends and objectives in this AI age that we're in, accelerating insights and efficiency depending on generative AI growth, for sure, but it will increase the need for data intelligence, the kind of things that are in catalogs, as catalogs expand, to look at AI assets, to manage AI assets as well, to be able to have a centralized and authoritative source of this information is critical. Critical to improve discovery and location of trusted data. Catalogs expansion, so that's what we're going to be talking about today as well, but it's a trend in the industry to manage, document, and accelerate findability of more types of data, and including AI assets. AI automation and documentation in catalogs is definitely a major technology trend that is improving upon the kind of manual management and maintenance that is often dominated traditionally, this sort of layer. Catalogs as a layer over the complexity of a lot of data silos. So we see organizations have multiple platforms, often multiple cloud platforms, and to be able to have this facility to be able to be above the silos, the diverse data platforms, different AI applications, and overcoming the disorganization of information that often is the case when you have lots of silos. And then data and AI governance, kind of having more streamlined data governance, but also moving it so it's integrated with AI governance, using catalogs and intelligence documentation to increase compliance, improve trust, to address the regulations that are arising, certainly around use of data and increasingly around use of AI. Okay, with that, thank you very much. And Andrew, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. That was a great presentation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Oliver Chu with Databricks. Oliver leads product marketing at Databricks for generative AI. He has spent the majority of his career in BI, data, analytics, and machine learning, having spent time at SAP, Microsoft, AWS, and now Databricks. Everyone, please welcome Oliver, and with that, I'll hand it over to you now. Sorry to interrupt, Oliver. It doesn't appear that I can hear you at this point. If I can just have you do a quick browser refresh for me. Try that one more time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead, Oliver. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. So I was just saying that research is really compelling and actually maps very well to the Databricks story about generative AI. And so I would love to spend a few minutes talking about how Databricks sees this generative AI world and how everything's evolving, and actually maps quite a bit to that research that we just talked about from Dave. So let me just start off by stating the obvious. Generative AI is taking this world by storm. And I know that some of you, based on the survey and the poll results, are still experimenting or playing around with it. Don't feel like you're behind, because that's actually what we see. So let me just start off with a few stats. 91% of organizations that we've surveyed specifically are already experimenting or investing in GenAI. And what we've seen is, especially with CEOs who have been polled, they really do believe that generative AI will give them and their organization a competitive advantage. And a lot of that advantage has to do with increased productivity. So helping their employees be much more productive in their day-to-day job. What we've seen very specifically is that although everyone understands at a hypothetical or theoretical level of the importance of GenAI or what GenAI can do for them, they are not confident moving from experimentation into production. In fact, the majority of organizations are facing this specific challenge. And so what exactly is that? Well, we talked a little bit about that, Dave did, in the research around data governance, data quality, and a bunch of other things. These are very specific examples of where GenAI has gone wrong, where they might have lacked enterprise context, or maybe the GenAI has hallucinated and given the wrong answer to customers. Or maybe it's giving away data that they shouldn't be giving away from a governance perspective. They're giving information about other people, other employees, or internal data to customers. These are all examples of what would make especially our leaders in our organizations very, very cautious about deploying GenAI. And so what I mean is that moving GenAI from experimentation into production is actually a very difficult and very expensive proposition. And we see three big trends around here. One is that organizations, they don't have control over the data or the models. So they're starting to realize that. The second is that bringing GenAI to a production quality, customer-facing application is actually quite difficult. And the third is that, and this is something that wasn't really talked about in the survey, but something that we've seen organizations who are starting to scale their GenAI applications at scale, at the enterprise scale, is that the current offerings out there will get much more and more expensive, especially as you deploy out there in an enterprise-wide or at least a departmental or team-wise fashion. These types of solutions can get quite expensive. And so really, the positive outcomes of deploying GenAI is the exact opposite of what I just said, right? So you're able to own your own GenAI models, but they've been specifically trained or augmented with your enterprise data. They're aware of your enterprise data. They know your enterprise data. And so that's one aspect. The second aspect is that you can move Gen AI models from experimentation to production quickly, and be able to do so in such a way that you're confident about the quality of the data. The third point is that you can actually either train or just deploy Gen AI or LLMs and make that super cost effective at scale. So let me just dive into these 3 points a little bit further, just for some common understanding. So what do I mean by control? Controlling your data, controlling your models. What we've seen is that oftentimes organizations simply believe that they can deploy a Gen AI application by using APIs that are given from a SaaS provider of Gen AI models. And what we've seen is organizations actually don't want to do that, or they do want to do that for experimentation, but once they want to deploy it into production, they actually want to control that model. They want to make sure that the quality that they've tested against that model will be consistent, will not change over time. They want to be able to augment their models with their own data and customize it with their own data. They want to make sure that there's an integrated permissions and governance from data to models. That's exactly what Dave talked about in some of that research. From a production quality perspective, the biggest concern is that especially chatbot or other Gen AI type applications will hallucinate, or will give toxic responses, or will give responses that are not relevant or inaccurate. And so predicting and just understanding Gen AI model output is a very important thing. Not only do you need to understand and predict it, you should be able to own the entire LLM or ML lifecycle through a very strict and cycle, basically an LLM ops lifecycle, and do so from a single platform, from ingestion, data ingestion, to model building, to deployment, and to retraining, and be able to have governance and all the things that Dave mentioned in terms of the underlying data itself needs to be in a production quality form. All that is super important for production quality Gen AI. The last point that I made is around the lower costs. So we should be able to not only deploy existing LLMs out there, LLMs from any model provider, and do so at a cost-effective scale. The unique aspect of Databricks that we haven't talked about yet is that Databricks actually lets you build your own custom LLM. And so if you wanted to, you can actually build your own LLM that is not even out there in the marketplace. It's something that you own and that you control. And Databricks' unique value proposition is that we can do that at 10x less cost. But we also are able to do so, or just be able to serve all of the existing LLMs that are out there in the marketplace. So really Databricks' value proposition is, it is more than just having the best LLM, which is what many organizations believe. Oh, I just need to find that best LLM, and that will allow me to be successful in doing generative AI. It is exactly kind of mapping to that research we just heard, which is you really need to think more holistically about your generative AI application. It's more than just having good models. You need to think about production quality. You need to think about your data. You need to think about cost. You need to think about control. You need to think about all these types of things. And so the last thing that I'll say about Databricks, just to kind of the last takeaway, is we heard a little bit about the ability to augment your generative AI LLM with an application pattern that we've probably likely have heard, or if you haven't, that's totally fine. That is this retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And this is really taking an existing LLM and augmenting it with a small set of your enterprise data that's constantly moving and changing. And so Databricks has those capabilities. But when you get to a more advanced state, as you move along the technology maturity curve of Gen AI, you would also do things like fine-tuning, and finally pre-training. Fine-tuning being you're modifying that LLM, you're retraining that LLM with even more data. And pre-training is, as I mentioned previously, you're building your own LLM from scratch. And any organization and company can actually do that using Databricks. And that's the end of my presentation. Back over to you, Andrew.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Oliver. That was a great presentation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our second guest speaker today, Ravi Shankar Rao Valhavjasula with Impetus. Dr. Ravi leads the data science practice at Impetus, where he has contributed extensively to various AI and ML initiatives. He has been involved in delivering successful data science engagements for several customers. Ravi has over 2 decades of experience working with data modeling and simulation and machine learning in engineering, design, manufacturing, energy, aerospace, life sciences, healthcare, and other areas. With that, please welcome Ravi, and with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Oliver and Dave. Really, very nice to see all the research and how Databricks is also doing lots of interesting things. So I am going to be talking about what Impetus is doing in generative AI and how we are actually helping customers in this space, and also talk about some of the work we're doing in Databricks as well. So with that, let me just go to the next slide, which is just talking about how to kind of bring sense to all of this data through GenAI. And one just quick brief about Impetus. We are a company established, since '97, and working on many Fortune 100 customers, and we have a global presence with like close to 4,000 employees. So it's and one more interesting thing is we were migration partner of the year for 2023 for Databricks. So it's really great accomplishment, and it's really nice to be working with Databricks in many areas, supporting whatever they're doing. So I'll just talk to the area of what we do in generative AI. And as you heard from both Dave and Oliver, there's many things that's under the umbrella of generative AI. And even before generative AI, we had AI/ML, right? So essentially, we had a lot of things we're doing. So the team at Impetus is fairly large, and we have a lot of people kind of working on many of these problems. And with AI/ML and generative AI, it's a really huge gamut of problems we are tackling, especially going with LLMs to do prompt engineering, like Oliver pointed out, or even the RAG, and then fine tuning and so forth. So all of those things are things we do. And as part of this, we are also kind of working with many customers to kind of create various generative AI applications. Many of our customers, like I think Dave pointed out, also are experimenting. But at the same time, there's a few of them that's kind of further down the road and kind of moving things to production. So I'll talk to some of that as well. And one more thing is to talk about how we can accomplish things for you, and through kind of what we call a data and AI labs. So I'll come to that towards the end of my presentation. We'll talk about how we can kind of figure out an idea and how we can deliver on that. So with that, let me just talk about more broadly about the maturity curve for generative AI, especially how we are helping customers in this space. And as you can imagine, many of you are probably at number 2 or 3, and a few of them are further down the road. But broad sense of comparing readiness to maturity is all about figuring out a data strategy and kind of building out the Gen AI foundation for that, and then doing responsible AI, Gen AI kind of frameworks to kind of eliminate bias in your data and kind of make sure your data is clean, all of that. And some of the data catalog and everything also kind of falls bang in the center of that. And now enabling all of that through contextualization and enriching all of the data across your enterprise. So that is where all the prompt engineering, fine tuning, and everything falls. And then the last part is the scaling part, which is fairly complex and involves kind of managing these things in production, which is where you need more control. Like Oliver said, you want to be able to kind of use your own LLMs and also build that with your data and not use an API. So we'll talk about that as well. But under each of these, we call these 5 pillars. And under each of these pillars, we have more details. I'll just briefly talk about that, which is essentially looking at what falls under the GenAI strategy and architecture, where we create all of the roadmaps and kind of figure out how to build the infrastructure and prioritizing use cases and so forth. Then looking at how to kind of build out the GenAI foundation, which is unifying all of your data, it kind of bringing all of the data together, and then kind of figuring out what needs to be done, the development stage and the deployment stage, and then kind of bringing all of this together with the applications that will be built on top of this. So we have accelerators to support each of these pieces. And in fact, we have Accelerator to kind of help you build out those platforms as well with just few clicks. And in fact, the next piece is where you need to tackle all of the things, like I said, about the model governance, the data privacy issues, and catalog is a key area that helps you build all of this, right? So now once you have these pieces, then you can start kind of looking at taking all of your data and integrating that, and looking at using vector databases and fine-tuning LLMs, and kind of figuring out how to build those experimental use cases and then start growing those and establishing them to become more mature products, which is where you can go into the scaling part and kind of start building out with LLM ops and all of the pieces. So this is a whole gamut of things. And under each of these, we do a lot of mini components that we help our customers and build our own solutions. So to kind of support that, I just want to leave you with this one slide, which talks about everything that we do under data science at Impetus. There's a lot of things we do with NLP, with AI, deep learning, and more recently with the generative AI. Right, last couple of years, it's been really growing, and there's a lot of things we do. And there's also, of course, the traditional AI, ML, and marketing and industrial analytics. And there's a lot of things here. If anything catches your eye, please ask a question, or please feel free to reach out to me or visit our website. There's a lot of information here. But just want to leave you with the thought that Impetus Data Science is a mature capability that we kind of help our customers across many verticals. And Databricks is a great partner that we work with and kind of delivering all of these services for. Now, I just want to kind of close with just one use case that we had delivered recently to a customer. This is all about kind of taking, and this was with Databricks, right? So primarily, how do you kind of help these organizations that are looking at incoming leads and making sure you're able to convert those quickly? And the whole pipeline and the center of this is essentially being able to kind of pull all these data together on Databricks and being able to build the lead matching, lead scoring, and lead assignment, all of this with ML, and enabling all of this through the catalog, and kind of creating a possibility to kind of do this quickly, far and better than it was done before. So, for example, we can score the leads that are coming in. We can actually, have the salespersons call the lead who originated that lead within like a minute, and also kind of do matching at scale really fast. And all of this will get better with LLMs. Even this is pre-LLM, kind of like just the last year that we did. But now we can think of changing ML to LLM, or even if it's on Databricks, DBRX or something else. Now imagine the kind of scale that you can deliver to customers. So these are things we're doing. I just want to kind of leave you with it, given that limited time. And there's also, Dave had talked about automation as one of the drivers for augmentation and automation, right? And as part of that, we have also done some interesting work kind of around document intelligence, taking all of the data that may be in enterprise, kind of bubbling up insights to automate the tasks that people might be doing, and augment their capability to be more productive. So those are things I not have in this deck, but I just wanted to leave you with that. And last is something we're doing with the Accelerator for Unity Catalog migration. And this is something very recent. It's our most newest accelerator. And it kind of helps you kind of take your data from existing workspaces and migrate all of that Unity catalog. And some of the work we're doing is kind of helping us build a GenAI use case for actually healthcare customer as well with Databricks, where we're looking at kind of building chatbots for helping look at empathetic and personalized feedback for healthcare kind of requirements. And this is work in progress, but I just wanted to give you the complexity of the task, because in this kind of setting, there's lots of data, and you want to be sure that the data is clean, there's no bias, because it's healthcare, especially regulated environment. So there's a lot of things that a catalog kind of helps you do. And we have an accelerator that's available in case anyone's interested. We'll be able to help you with that as well. So I think that's all I had, and I want to just leave you with this Data and AI Labs thread that we have, which is essentially a way for us to engage quickly with any customer who is interested, kind of go from a readiness assessment to kind of building out carving out a small design lab and then a build lab, where we can do the whole thing, small piece of work to show value. And then this could be under data unification or the LLM and RAG and everything around building those capabilities. So this is the bulk of things that we do at data science and data science at Impetus. And I just wanted to kind of share this. So I'll hand it back to Andrew. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Ravi. That was fantastic. Now it's time for our fireside chat. So I'll ask that both Dave and Oliver rejoin us. And Dave, I will pass it over to you when you are ready to begin the discussion.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And Ravi, Oliver, good stuff on your presentations. Maybe we can talk first about becoming Gen AI ready, because I think it's a dominant topic we have here. What is the kind of maturity curve that you're seeing take shape in a lot of organizations, and how easy is it for them to go from their experience in AI and machine learning to get to generative AI? Ravi, maybe I'll start with you on that one. Well, it looks like you may be muted.
Apologies, sorry. So thank you, Dave. That was a very good question. In fact, I started with that, my presentation with that, almost that, which talked about the maturity aspect. We have like 5 pillars we articulate, which is essentially getting your strategy and the infrastructure, everything ready, and then go to the next stage where you're talking about kind of building a data foundation, and then doing the governance and data catalog for all of the responsible AI, and then going to kind of doing all the fine tuning and so forth, and then scaling it out, right? So we find a lot of customers kind of in the if you put number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we see a lot of them kind of in the 1 and 2 and few on 3. Now, a lot of things in between. There are experimental use cases kind of moving into production, but from an enterprise scale, getting a use case production that uses all of the data is a difficult task, or at least it's not insurmountable. It's definitely doable, and some enterprises are doing it well. And it's a learning curve for most of them. But definitely going from where, especially if you already have AI ML, they have understanding ML. Now from that to Gen AI is the next jump. So essentially, this is a way to kind of bring that awareness and grow the readiness with the leadership's backing. Especially that counts a lot. But the mature curve is step by step, and we see that across enterprises, and be happy to talk more on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Oliver, may I look at your perspective on how easy it is to go from AI and machine learning orientation to more generative AI, and how can organizations overcome some of the concerns they may have about moving into heavier use of LLMs and Gen AI?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I agree with Ravi in terms of the kind of the step-by-step process of building Gen AI. Databricks' perspective, even before Gen AI, was that every organization should build a solid foundation and really invest in their ML ops, which is ML ops is really making sure that the entire process from data all the way through the ML models, that there is an appropriate handoff, and each of the stages and the phases, you're making the appropriate steps from getting the data ready all the way to training a model and then deploying the model, and then understanding the improvements that you need to make to the model, and then retraining and then redeploying, and then it's kind of like a virtual cycle. As it relates to Gen AI, it is a very similar model, in fact. And we've actually coined it LLM ops, which is the ability to now, instead of just ML models, now you're thinking about LLM as part of that virtuous cycle. But it's a very similar cycle where you are training your LLM or augmenting it or fine-tuning it, and then you're deploying it, and then you're looking and evaluating how it's doing, how effective it is, and then retraining, and then redeploying. And so we see actually, if you've already kind of deployed machine learning, especially if you've done it on Databricks, it's definitely a straightforward path to go from understanding AI, ML, and having a full ML ops structure in place to then transforming it with generative AI. I just wanted to just tweak what I said in terms of, hey, that's ML to LLMs. One more thing is, as you're kind of experimenting with LLMs, we've also seen a technology maturity even within the generative AI umbrella. So from a technology maturity, we've seen anywhere from people experimenting with proprietary LLMs that are available from SaaS providers via APIs. We talked a little bit about that. To understanding that, oh, in fact, what I really need to do is make my LLM understand my enterprise corporate data. So I need to do something like retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And then what we've seen is the next steps after that. Usually, it's a first deployment. It's a chatbot, likely using RAG. That's kind of the first kind of experiment that most companies do. And then as they mature, they're thinking about how can I actually own the model, not just using a model from a SaaS product. How can I actually implement a solution where I own that model and I've augmented it or I fine-tuned it, and then the final stage is, let me just deploy my own model that I've trained completely from scratch for my organization. And so that's kind of the technology maturity curve. And of course, that's on top of everything that Ravi has mentioned in terms of making sure your strategy for your company is there, making sure you've identified the right business use case, the operations, the governance, make sure your people are ready. These are all part of the maturity curve, absolutely. But hopefully I've given you a high-level view of the technology itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. I want to make sure we cover catalog, so maybe we can talk about that for a bit. I know Databricks Unity Catalog is an important offering for bringing together data and machine learning assets, and maybe you could talk about some of the importance of that and how it, as organizations moving into generative AI, how that fits with what they're trying to do.
Yeah. So I only alluded to Unity Catalog a little bit in my presentation, but Ravi went ahead and talked about it. So thanks, Ravi, for that. But for those who don't know what Unity Catalog is Databricks has a unique solution, Unity Catalog, where the main value proposition of Unity Catalog is it is a single solution for both governance and catalog over both your data assets as well as your ML AI assets. And it also extends into Gen AI assets, right? And so from a single solution, you can govern structured and unstructured data, ML models or LLM models, your notebooks, your dashboards, your files, and that's all available on a single solution across all these different assets. And so it really is, we believe, a very differentiated solution to simplifying regulatory compliance in a single solution. And so as it relates to Unity Catalog with GenAI, the great thing is because it's already applicable to from your entire kind of LLM lifecycle, from data all the way to models, it's very easy for us to extend that value proposition to LLMs as well. And so now when we deploy, Databricks deploys generative AI, our models are all securely governed, access controls, and in addition to all the stuff that Unity Catalog provides, we have the data lineage and all that kind of stuff, all in a single solution, all inside of Databricks. And so that actually maps very well, Dave, back to your research around making sure the data is ready, make sure that there's governance in place. But that's basically how Unity Catalog solves these or kind of mitigates these governance challenges that you mentioned.
Well, I know the AI-generated documentation, which we wanted to talk about, is a part of the Unity Catalog feature set, and that's very important because if we see in our research, as I showed, the documentation, maintenance, things like that are difficult aspects of having a catalog. So how does that work, and how does could it contribute to Gen AI readiness?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so like documents or files, especially, in generative AI, the interesting thing about documents is that oftentimes the chatbots that are being deployed for generative AI serve as your starting point for search, right? So you oftentimes want to go to a chatbot and say, hey, where can I find this document? That could be one aspect. Another aspect is just tell me the answer to something. And so what we've done at Databricks is to make sure that we have a very simple solution to ingest documents as part of your generative AI solution. We call it vector search. Vector search is a vector database that allows you to bring in unstructured data like documents as part of your chatbot. And so now you could simply ask any question, and the generative AI solution will be able to, in real time, figure out what the answer is based on all the documents that you've put into the system for the RAG system, and be able to respond back not just an answer of where to find the document, but also what's in the document itself. So it could actually start to answer questions that are inside that document, and respond back intelligently back to the user. So that's a really interesting thing. And the value prop of Databricks is that the same data pipelines that you already built for your underlying data platform, those pipelines you could just re-leverage as part of your generative AI solution. You don't have to rebuild a new data pipeline. In fact, you just have to build your vector database on top of that, specify the documents that you want to index, and then away you go. It's actually quite simple, and it's a really easy value prop.
Yeah, that's interesting. So actually using Gen AI really for the documentation process itself.
Yeah.
Well, Ravi, I don't want to leave you out of this discussion. Maybe you could give some perspective on use of catalogs for AI projects, and particularly as you're moving into generative AI.
Oh, definitely. So thank you, Dave. So I think one challenge, of course, is data, especially if you're looking at in an enterprise scale, there's a lot of duplication that happens, and you have to be able to kind of figure out how to kind of remove that, especially also there is sensitive PII data, you want to kind of take or mask it or, remove that. So a lot of challenges, especially from the data governance point of view, and the catalog kind of helps you kind of map all those pieces. And also with GenAI, we can actually go inside those, and wherever there are fields that are missing, we can generate information about those fields. So that can help you build the data lineages and everything that will be useful for the GenAI application building downstream. In fact, we're looking at bringing the RAG along with that, the metadata on top of that to kind of figure out, because you're looking at documents, like Oliver said, in multiple locations, and you want to be able to figure out where those documents came from. So there is essentially work we're doing, for example, in the financial space, looking at customers who want to kind of do due diligence. So there's documents coming from various sources. Now that the challenge is because that data is kind of like partially known. So you have to be able to kind of fill that information out to kind of generate that and kind of keep that ready so the LLMs can consume that. So we're talking about RAG, but on top of that, doing metadata that you're pulling from, let's say, a metadata store, or if you're on Databricks and you have access to Unity catalog. So a lot of things you can combine together to kind of create a application that's more powerful than just simple application. And that's something we're doing today. And all of the documents that Oliver talked about, also bringing these different kind of documents, and with vector search, essentially you are able to kind of combine all of those and search across those document categories. Could be, images, could be documents, could be other things. Even you can take, for example, attachments in emails, right? So it's a lot different kinds of attachments. So we can actually find those and figure out tasks that we're taking too long, how to simplify that, and we've done that as well.
Sorry, excellent. I know that a lot of the importance around governance, particularly data and AI governance, organizations that I think we did see in our research that today, even the poll talked about the governance was an issue that some attendees today are, that's a roadblock for them. So how does this capability contribute into governance? I think you mentioned a little bit of it in what you just said, but how can organizations use it to reduce the risks of governance problems and other practices you might recommend? Ravi,
I can, yeah. So essentially, there are things to kind of make sure your data duplications are minimized, right? So that's a big challenge. And like I talked about the sensitive data, how do you kind of anonymize it or at least mask it so the models are not able to see that? The governance is a critical aspect because you want to also control for bias. So if the data has issues, you want to be able to tackle that as well. All of these under the overall capability or integrating into the application. So the cleaner and better your data is, the better the insights generated and less the hallucinations that you can control for. So I think ultimately you want to be able to kind of bring all these components together as you're building the applications with LLM ops and other things. Because once you move into production, it becomes a bigger challenge. So all of this has to be tackled even before you get to that stage. So
Great. Oliver, any thoughts on governance issues and how organizations can reduce risks? And then maybe we probably ought to make sure we have time for audience questions after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree intrinsically to everything that Ravi said, right? Like, I would add one more step too. It's like, in addition to, even before deployment, you have to make sure that everything is ready to go. The data is clean, the data is prepared, the model has been trained or is aware of your enterprise data. And of course, you've deployed something like a Unity catalog to make sure that the governance measures are in place, that security, access control, that people who are asking questions will not get answers that they shouldn't be given access to. All of that needs to be in place. One more step is needed after you deploy it into production. Generative AI is just moving so quickly. And what we've seen is, even after deploying into production, you have to be monitoring exactly, like literally everything that is coming out of the generative AI solution, and monitoring very closely on, are these responses relevant? Are these responses of high quality? Do users trust it? Is it hallucinating? Is it giving any kind of issues? And so monitoring is kind of a very important step even after deployment, and making sure that you as a practitioner, implementer, executive that's overseeing this project is be able to understand, okay, yes, this is operating at production quality, or no, we have to make adjustments to the model. This is an iterative process, and we have to make sure we understand why the model is performing the way it's performing and what are the steps I need to do to correct it. And so these are all, it's kind of side with governance. Governance is important, but this is just all part and parcel of moving a model into production for production quality. I think those are all super important.
And yeah, good practices for attending to that. Okay, well, let's move into audience questions. So Andrew, I'm going to hand it back over to you at this point.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you all for that discussion there. We do have several questions from the audience. I think we'll try to just squeeze in two given our limited time here. So Oliver, I'll start with you, and then Ravi, I'll have the second question ready for you. So Oliver, what's your advice on how to go from experimentation to production quality for Gen AI applications?
Yeah. Good question, and we've been talking about it throughout. So the main things I'll say is, just to summarize a lot of the things that we said along the way is, look, the first step that most organizations do when they start their Gen AI journey is look for the best model, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. You should absolutely do that. But what I would argue is that having a good model is just the first step. The steps in which you need to take really into account to deploying a production quality Gen AI application is really thinking about this entire life cycle of LLM ops, and so really about everything that we heard today. Think about your data, think about your model, yes. Think about ways to monitor that model. Think about ways to govern that model. Think about the security access controls that you have on top of the model. And think about this as an iterative process as you are deploying, monitoring, retraining, redeploying. And so this is an iterative cycle that every organization really needs to take very seriously. And in doing so, hopefully the end result is a model that is producing at a high quality, and it's not just a model, as hopefully I've landed, is an entire system, an AI system, where the model is a key piece, and everything that surrounds it is almost as important. And so if you think about it as a systems problem, that is a great step to deploying a production quality Gen AI application.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Ravi, we'll end it on this question for you. Could you provide examples of how generative AI is transforming specific industry verticals, such as healthcare or finance, beyond the general capabilities of automation and data management?
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, Andrew. So there's generative AI is kind of touching many of the core business use cases, right? So essentially, we have chatbot, we have all the low-hanging fruits, but now you're looking at the overall ability of these enterprises, take healthcare or or financial. So they're looking at, for example, kind of validating all of their core business use cases. In finance, I talked about due diligence and security aspects. So you have to be able to kind of tackle all these data sources and integrate them and kind of make sense out of it. Today is done by humans. It's a very laborious lot of tasks. So LLMs can help automate that and also augment the human capabilities that Dave talked about early on. And in healthcare, it's very, very critical. It's going to transform the whole way we do healthcare today. Could it be the payer side, could it be the provider side, or the patient side? All of them have so many use cases that will kind of make you derive benefit. I know we are out of time, so it can hard to go more detail, but we do a lot of work in healthcare and finance and all of these use cases. I'll be happy to talk more in detail as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ravi. I would like to take a moment here to thank all of our speakers. We did, of course, hear from David Stoddard with TDWI, Oliver Chu with Databricks, and Ravi Shankar Rao Vahabjosala with Impetus. Would also like to thank again Databricks and Impetus for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar, and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation, as well as a link to download the PDF of today's slides. Lastly, now it's my pleasure to introduce the winner of today's special prize, a free 3-day pass to TDWI Transform 2024 at any conference in 2024, valued at over $3,000. The winner today is Angie Thum with NetJets. Angie Thum, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your last name there. Congratulations, we will be reaching out to you very soon to coordinate the free pass. And for those unfamiliar, TDWI hosts in-person educational events each quarter. Our next one is TDWI Transform 2024 in San Diego from August 4th through the 9th. As a value webinar attendee, we're offering each and every one of you $100 off any event package. Please check your post-webinar communications for a unique discount code and a link to further details. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.